Hello and welcome to my latest video. This video we are adding Jeff Smith, onto my middleweight playlist. So let us go to his main career opponents. So on slide 1, for Jeff Smith, he starts out with 3 fights against former middleweight champion George Chipp. Jeff Smith wins all 3 fights. He also fights and loses to former coloured middleweight champion Eddie Palmer. Jeff Smith also gains a win over former champion Mike Glover in a singular fight, before then also suffering a defeat to French puncher Georges Carpentier. And then on to one of his main rivals, Hadi Greb. Now, Jeff Smith didn't win any of these fights, even though in more than one of them he gave Hadi Greb a very tough tussle. He had 7 fights with Hadi Greb, scoring no wins with 6 losses and 1 draw. Next up is Mike McTeague. Jeff Smith fought a trilogy of fights against the former light heavyweight champion, scoring 2 wins with 1 loss and no draw. And then he also fought another former coloured middleweight champion, Panama Joe Gans, on 2 occasions, suffering 2 defeats. Next up, another former coloured middleweight champion, Jamaica Kid. Jeff Smith fought him on 8 occasions, scoring 7 wins with no losses and 1 draw. And then on to one of the lineal middleweight champions, Mike O'Dowd, who defeated Hadi Greb, and he also likewise defeated Jeff Smith. Dowd will, of course, be covered on a future video. Next up is Bob Mohar. Jeff Smith beats him twice from 2 fights, and then he splits 2 fights with the great Tommy Loughran, scoring 1 win and 1 loss. Next up, former coloured light heavyweight champion Lee Anderson. Jeff Smith defeats him. He also suffers a defeat to Gene Tunney, a fight that Gene Tunney said was a very, very hard fight indeed. Jeff Smith could fight aggressively or defensively, and he could time you as you came in, landing pinpoint punches. One of the Greb fights, Greb's face would bust up. He won the fight, but his face would bust up. At differing times, both Greb and Tunney said Jeff Smith was probably, on his day, the hardest opponent to beat that they had fought. So anyway, after losing to Gene Tunney, Jeff Smith next up has a 4-fight series with the great middleweight Mike Gibbons. Now, Jeff Smith wins one of those, suffers 3 defeats and no draws from that 4-fight series, and he splits 2 fights, with Australian middleweight Les Darcy, scoring 1 win and 1 loss. So very tough first slide for Jeff Smith. When we go on to slide 2, we're still on Hall of Famers and pound for pounders, with Leo Florian Hook. Jeff Smith fought him on one occasion, fighting to a draw. He then twice fought the excellent middleweight contender Jimmy Clabby, scoring 1 win and 1 draw from 2 fights. Next up is a win against Willie Lewis. He also gained a win over excellent middleweight contender and former pound for pound rated fighter Eddie McGaughty, before then suffering 2 defeats in singular fights. The first was to Paddy Lavin, and the second was to Dick Nelson, who I believe I've covered more recently on my welterweight playlist. So Young Lowry is next. Jeff Smith defeats Young Lowry. He then fights Frank Mantell on 2 occasions, scoring 1 win and fighting 1 draw, before then losing to excellent middleweight contender Jack McCarron. Next up is the well-travelled Jackie Clark. He fought a who's who of everybody. Jeff Smith fought him on 3 occasions, scoring 2 wins with 1 loss. He then also gained a singular win over Young Ahern, before then fighting Johnny Howard 4 times, scoring 3 wins, 1 loss, no draw from those 4 fights. And the final 3 names on here are all singular wins. The first is against Art McGill, the second is against Dick Rice, and the third is against top 10 contender at light heavyweight Martin Burke. So wow, there's slide 2 of the main opponents for Jeff Smith. When we go on to our third and final slide, we see he fought and defeated 2 very tough contenders. The first was Clay Turner, and the second was Chuck Wiggins. Now, Tony Murillo is next, another contender. Jeff Smith fought him on 2 occasions, scoring 1 win, 1 loss, and no draws. And then he twice also lost, to former contender George Manley. And the final 2 names on here, the first is former top 10 contender Cuban Bobby Brown. Jeff Smith suffers a defeat in a singular fight to him, and then he scores a singular win, in the final fight highlighted against Frank Moody. So there are 69 fights highlighted there. Jeff Smith won 37 of them, suffered 27 losses and scored 5 draws. But what a tough career he had. So on to the first of his stat slides. Jeff Smith scored 48 knockouts in his career, 27 of them in 3 rounds or less, and he scored 6 first round wins. Now Jeff Smith scored 1 KO against champion, 0 KOs against Hall of Famers, and 1 KO against pound for pounders. He also scored 0 KOs against rated fighters. Now, Jeff Smith fought a lot of career rounds. He comes in with a total of 1,632. He fought 0 title fight rounds. Amazing, isn't it? But, very few people give him credit for being ducked. But yeah, he fought 0 title fight rounds. Against champions, he fought a massive total of 373 rounds against champions. He fought around 200 rounds against Hall of Famers, and he fought also a large total of rounds, 321 against pound for pound fighters. Now in numbers that would be way higher, okay, because Jeff Smith was a pre-rating era fighter who kind of crossed into the rating era. Now obviously these numbers are heavily reduced. He still gets 225 rounds against top 10 fighters, 150 rounds against top 3 fighters, and 110 rounds against ring champions. Like I say, those last 3 figures there would be massively higher had ratings been around. His fights with Glover and Chip and Hook and all of them, would be against rated opponents amongst many others. So, let us go on to his slide against champions. Jeff Smith, he had 33 fights against champions, including 17 wins, 14 losses and 2 draws. And Jeff Smith defeated 7 individual champions. They were George Chip, Mike Glover, Mike Mateague, Jamaica Kid, Bob Mohar, Tommy Loughran and Lee Anderson. And he scored a knockout over 1 champion individually. That was Bob Mohar. So when we go on to the slide against Hall of Famers, Jeff Smith had 19 fights against Hall of Fame fighters, scoring 3 wins with 14 losses and 2 draws. And Jeff Smith defeated 3 individual Hall of Famers. They were Les Darcy, Mike Gibbons and Tommy Loughran. And Jeff Smith, of course, scored 0 knockouts against those 3 men, so he has knocked out 0 Hall of Famers individually. So when we go on to the final slide against more niche opponent, okay, it is pound for pounders. Jeff Smith comes in with a total of 29 fights against pound for pound fighters with 12 wins, 14 losses and 3 draws. And he defeated 9 individual pound for pound fighters. They were Jimmy Clabby, Willie Lewis, George Chip, Mike Gibbons, Mike Glover, Eddie McGaughty, Les Darcy, Bob Mohar and Tommy Loughran. So excellent list of names being there. And he scored knockout over one of those pound for pounders who was also a champion, Bob Mohar. So he's knocked out 1 pound for pounder individually. So when we go on to his record against rated fighters again, he has more defeats than wins. More of his fights against rated fighters were towards the end of his career. Had like I said, they've been around his whole career. He would have had a massive total. He still manages 20, including 6 wins, 13 losses and 1 draw. He has 13 fights against top 3 rated fighters, scoring 3 wins, 9 losses, 1 draw. And he has a small number compared to what it would have been, 10 fights against ring champions, including 1 win, 8 losses, 1 draw. So Jeff Smith, even with restricted, defeated 5 individual rated fighters, and he scored knockouts over 0 individual rated fighters. So moving on, okay, to title fight slide, as demonstrated by his title fight rounds, Jeff Smith had no world title fights, so he has 0 wins in any of the 6 categories, 0s in title fight numbers and 0s in defences and title fight KOs. So really not a lot to add there. All I would say is I find it scandalous, okay, that a fighter of Jeff Smith's quality never even got a world title fight, like many fighters in his era, but unlike Burley, unlike many other fighters, Obi Walker, who get rightly defended for being avoided and not being given title shots. They're only the fighters like Burley, the Black Murderers Row and others are only the tip of the iceberg. So many other fighters from all backgrounds, okay, never got title shots, and it is scandalous. So, there we go, okay, on to our final slide. Obviously, Jeff Smith captured no world titles, captured no lineal titles, and captured no undisputed titles. So, like I said, Jeff Smith will now join my middleweight playlist, okay? The playlists are now starting to grow slowly and will continue to grow for a long time to come, until I've far surpassed my previous total of 664. career videos. So there's Jeff Smith. More videos coming soon, including the first of a new kind of video. I kind of covered it on my old channel, but I'm bringing them back, but using the new ratings, and that is top 10 by country. Okay, not counting current active fighters, but top 10 by country. So all the fighters in my retired database are factored. So from any particular country, if a fighter is currently active, he will not be considered until his final all-time great score is known after the end of his career. But yeah, those are going to be starting at some point over the next week. I'm not going to do loads of them, just one every now and then, just to slowly build a playlist up. I will title them as 2025 top 10, say, Koreans, or top 10 Japanese, or top 10 French fighters, but I'll list them as top 10 greatest French boxers 2025. So if in 2 or 3 years time I do an update, I can then update them, put the new video up there, and remove the old one. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. But yep, I'm out for now. Jeff Smith will be scored into my rankings now. So I'm the boxing librarian. I'll be back shortly with more videos. I'm out.